Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliet Beauchamp and I'm here with Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus, as well as Macworld Executive Editor Michael Simon. So we are live on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions or comments while we're chatting, please feel free to weigh in and we'll do our best to respond to you while we are actually live. And the topic of the day is sort of the future of iOS 15, and kind of what it means for the iPhone and your everyday iPhone user. I think we're going to start off, Ken, I'll throw it to you, but something big that is going to happen with the iOS 15 upgrade is users are going to have the option of upgrading to iOS 15 as perhaps normal, or they can say, you know what, I'm good with iOS 14. I've been liking using it, and you can stay on iOS 14, continue to get any important security updates, but otherwise stick with that. So it's kind of two different tracks. So Ken, can you tell us a little bit about what is going on there?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's interesting about this, and thanks for having me. Johnny Evans wrote about this for Computer World today. It was one of the little known things that I don't know that a lot of iOS users have picked up on. And that is, unlike in the past when the new version of iOS rolled out, Apple basically, tried to move everybody to it as quickly as possible. It's interesting, and a little bit of background, that iOS 15 works on the same devices as iOS 14. So it's not like Apple's leaving behind a lot of older hardware this year. But with this new change, instead of being upgraded automatically or being asked to upgrade automatically, users can say, no, I want to wait. It's important in some ways, especially for enterprises, because enterprises are loath to jump to a new operating system without basically testing things out to make sure that the systems and the backends that they have and the apps that they use all work. So in that sense, it's kind of like when Microsoft gives Windows users a chance to hold off on an upgrade so you can test to make sure everything works, so you don't upgrade and break things. That's an important business consideration. Going forward, and this is where I think things get kind of interesting, is that you made the point, Julie, you can see this sort of forking here where
Right.
you might have a version of iOS, say it's iOS 15 next year, that works on all the devices, that go back several years. And maybe iOS 16 will only work on the last 3 or 4 years worth of devices, or maybe only, the most recent one. And it's a way for Apple to perhaps separate the features and updates that new devices get versus the security updates that older devices would continue to get. It's just, we don't know exactly what Apple's going to do with this, but this is sort of what Johnny was talking about in the computer world, that you might see this bifurcation, and it is sort of unusual. Michael, I'm curious, does that jive with what you sort of see here, or do you think anything else you want to add?
I'm sorry, you lost me in enterprise, Ken. What were you saying?
Come on, that's why we're here, man.
Yeah.
Shall I recap for you?
No, I'm only joking.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a curious change. I don't know how many people it's going to affect.
Yeah, I wonder how many people are going to say, "Oh, never mind. I'm not going to upgrade to iOS 15."
Well, for one, you need to know it's there. So, like, the way it works is in the software update little pane, you'll be on iOS 14, for example, and it'll say iOS 15 is available. Like, you'll have two options. I would assume most people would just jump to the latest one. I think that the people who wait and make a lot of noise on Twitter and social media, they're a pretty small yet vocal minority. Most people update. It's pretty rare that there's major issues. There are some. It happens here and there. And my guess is that's part of the reason why Apple is doing this. Is if something does happen, maybe it would be easier to roll back to a prior version. Perhaps that's part of this, where they might make, say, iOS 15.1 available, and then maybe push iOS 15.0.3 or something like it gives them a bit more flexibility with the update system. As far as the implications that it has, iOS 16, there's a really good chance that it loses. I mean, first, Apple is supporting the iPhone 6S on iOS 15. That's incredible. That's 6 years. And so by the time iOS 16 comes out, it'll be 7 years. That is, I'm pretty much safe to say that that will not be able to upgrade to iOS 16. Now,
Sure.
here's the thing with that. Apple, they occasionally push out old security updates. In fact, I just had one this past week. iOS 12 got an update
Right.
to a couple of critical vulnerabilities. It actually got the update before iOS 14, which is interesting. But it's rare that that happens. And there are, things break. Security updates are necessary, even on the iPhone. And I think Apple is making steps. And part of this could be because of the court cases, and part of it could be because of the scrutiny that's on them for various things. They're making it, a little bit more flexible to do this stuff. But separating software updates from version updates, I think, is an extremely important step here.
Mhm.
And that's the benefit to consumers. So if it's true that Apple is not going to support 6 years worth of phones, I don't think that's what they're doing here. I think that you'll still, so let's say you buy the iPhone 13. I think the iPhone iOS, iOS 20 will be available for your phone. I don't think Apple's going to fundamentally change how it supports phones, but it does give them flexibility without hurting those older devices, in the sense that they would be vulnerable to some major security thing. And then
Right.
Apple has to scramble and push out an older update.
Well, it's
Right.
interesting because one of the points that Johnny made was that this also allows Apple to move ahead. There's sometimes this disparity between how advanced the hardware is and how maybe not quite as advanced the software is. Of course, we've talked about this around the iPad a lot. The thing about doing this bifurcation thing is that it allows Apple to move ahead with the latest hardware, gets the latest features and all kinds of things that Apple can do, maybe around AR, VR, whatever, that the older phones would not be able to do. So rather, it allows Apple to press on with what it's doing in terms of software with the latest hardware that comes out next year, the year after, while still maintaining, as Michael says, some level of support for devices that are 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. We'll see. But
it also, so I mean, Apple does that now to a degree. If you look at the list of compatibility, it's like, as we said, it goes back to the iPhone 6s. The iPhone 6s is not getting a bunch of features.
Right.
Some of the higher end features that require, first of all, the neural processor, all that series stuff, offline theory, that requires the A12 Bionic and later. And there are other features that are just for maybe the iPhone 10s, maybe the iPhone 12. Obviously the 5G stuff is the iPhone 12. So it's not all for everybody.
Right.
But what this, so with that, there are optimizations that Apple could make to older software, and they do. Let's not forget, we had this whole battery thing where Apple was degrading, we'll say, the battery on older devices.
Right.
It was slowing down the processor to make sure that the battery worked to the, so they can kind of target these things maybe a little bit better with a split of this software update, or it could just be that this is for that small but vocal minority, and it's really not. Maybe we're looking too much into this
to be upgraded.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Listen, I like options. That's one thing that Apple has done under the Tim Cook era, is they've been way more open to this type of stuff than they would have been under Steve Jobs. And perhaps that's just a natural extension of how big Apple is and how many products it has. But I think it's also it's a fundamental thinking of its consumers and its customers and how they use their phones. And that, listen, options aren't necessarily a bad thing. Changing defaults, changing options, changing things that you have. The home screen stuff we got with iOS 14. That's a major shift in Apple's thinking. Giving people the option to change the way Apple wants you to do something. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And in this case, I think it's great.
I think it's going to be interesting. I think I'm going to push back just a little bit. I think there may be a fair number of people out there who really don't jump quickly. I mean, I know, very rabid Apple people who always wait for the 0.1 release. They'd like to jump to the next operating system as soon as it's out. They want to make sure there aren't any bugs. And I think that there's, a number of people who may not like the changes that Apple's done in terms of like navigating, or they may not like widgets, or they may want more time, So there's definitely a vocal group on Twitter I think there may be a larger group that's happy to have the choice. We'll wait a little while and eventually upgrade. I'm going to be very curious to see if it changes the path, the upgrade path that we see every year, because Apple's very good at, as soon as the new version of iOS rolls out, within a couple of months, you're looking at like half the installed base or 60% of the installed base is already on that. That's not something you see on the Android side of things. So I'm wondering, you know, I'll be curious to see once we get to October, November, December, whether this choice, whether people actually are using that choice to hold off. You know, we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah. And I feel like to your enterprise point, Ken, I think it could be good for, you know, if you are giving all of your employees iPhones to work, it kind of makes sense to say, okay, don't upgrade yet, stick with iOS 14 for a little bit. And then if there's some pertinent app, iOS app that you're using that is for some reason not helpful or not working as well in iOS 15, at least then you know, and then you don't have a ton of people with iPhones that they can't really use for work. So
right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a big thing with work devices, because
Totally.
sometimes you can't upgrade unless IT lets you.
Right.
And if they're not ready to, you're on an older version, and you know you're somewhat vulnerable. And I'm sure
Exactly.
that companies don't want to do that. It's also an important distinction. This is an iOS thing. Mac is not changing, so that's the same as it was. So security updates do arrive separately sometimes, but it will be, you know, Apple will have to push them to, you know, Catalina or whatever they need to if it's not Monterey.
I'm going to sort of combine one of the a viewer question with a question of my own. The viewer question specifically is kind of talking about haptics and upgrading from an iPhone 11 to an iPhone 12, and maybe like, are the haptics that much better on the 12? But I have another iPhone question. You guys can mull that over if you want. But my question is, when the eventual iPhone 13 ships out, do you guys think, I wonder if users are going to have a choice for an iPhone 13, you know, or are they going to say, no, every single one is shipping with iOS 15?
I would say definitely not, because that would require downgrading. Those things they ship with iOS 15, they ship with the latest. I don't think you're going to be able to go backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, you would break stuff.
Apple's never done that. You get the new device, you get the
Yeah, I mean, nobody does that, because
the
hardware is tied into the OS and the features, and
especially at Apple. Completely integrated.
Definitely not. But you'll be able to stay on iOS 15 in a year and not go to iOS 16,
or maybe even a couple of years,
or maybe a couple of years. Yeah.
So it's sort of setting this precedent now.
Yeah. You know, like I said, it's a good feature. I do think that, I don't think it'll affect adoption rate much at all, but I do think it gives Apple, you know, just one more thing. And I'm somewhat cynical, but I do think this is somewhat related to all of their regulatory court cases, where, you know, it's one less thing that they're forcing people to do, users to.
Sure.
And this is also how Android does it. You know, Google, they're separate. They come, security updates come monthly, version upgrades come, you know, whenever. And I think that's a good cadence. I wouldn't be surprised if Apple falls into a monthly security update thing rather than just, you know, whenever the dot is ready. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But there was another question that we didn't answer.
It was haptics. I guess
haptics as in the vibration stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
12 versus 11.
Yeah, no difference. Apple, it's a small thing, but Apple's haptics are fantastic. They've been for many generations of iPhone, if not all of them. It's funny because on the Android side, like every phone is different. Some are just like jarringly vibraty, and some you can't feel. And iPhones are just they're perfect. My guess is there's a whole team of people that just sits in a room and plays with buzzes all day long.
Yeah.
Because they're really good.
Basically, if you like the haptics from the iPhone 11, you'll be fine.
They're not different really much at all. I mean, maybe if I compared the two, I'd find difference, but they're certainly not noticeably different in a worse way.
Fair enough. So, unless you guys have any further thoughts about this bifurcation, I think we can shift gears a little bit. And Mike, you've wrote this article on Macworld that I will link right now for everyone who's watching over on YouTube, but kind of about some of the updates that are coming to iOS 15 that are, I guess Apple's sort of setting up a legacy for itself that, like, if and when an iPhone becomes obsolete, like, these features will be, you'll reflect and say, oh, that's why they released this then. So I think some of them are pretty interesting if you want to discuss that.
I thought they were fascinating, especially the
Yeah.
part where Michael talks about the death of the iPhone. I mean, that it certainly got
That
my attention.
must have cut you.
Yes, it
deep
did.
then.
So, Michael, please, elaborate. What are you talking about here,
Well, I mean, I think the iPhone is dying.
No.
In the same way all of us are dying. Like each
man? Speak for yourself, buddy. I'm not going anywhere.
Each day is a little bit closer, but I think it's interesting how Apple kind of set up iOS 15. So there are features that we'll be able to take advantage of immediately with our phone, but there are also features that we'll be able to see in a couple of years, like kind of how these other devices use them that aren't the iPhone, namely the Apple Watch, these rumored FaceTime HomePod with screen products, and also I just totally lost my train of thought. But I'll start with the Apple Watch and then I'll remember what I'm talking about. So that's it's been pretty clear since the Apple Watch launched that that's the device at some point that's going to be our main travel device. I think it's not quite there yet, but it's fast enough. It's obviously portable enough. The battery is good enough. And I think that Apple is slowly adding these features to reduce dependency on the phone. And the one that really got me is this digital key stuff and this digital wallet stuff.
Sure.
So, it's not there yet. It needs to be supported by a whole lot more devices and places and things. But the setup, the premise is that you'll be able to walk to your house and have a smart lock. You walk up, it knows it's you because you have an Apple Watch, and unlocks and you're there. Same thing with your car, your hotel room. If you're traveling, you can put your digital passport on there. Like there's a lot of cool stuff. And by upgrading Wallet to support the Apple Watch, that's not something that's going to be immediately noticeable to most people who have Apple Watches in the fall. But a couple years down the line, it just takes one more thing away from the phone, and also elevates the watch into a place where it could become our primary device. And listen, we're not going to be writing long emails on it, but Apple also upgraded that. Yeah, they made dictation better. They made it easier to edit stuff. So they're slowly adding features to the watch that take just a little bit away from the iPhone each time to prepare for the inevitable day when we're just tired of carrying around these 6-inch pieces of glass everywhere.
Don't take my phone. You're killing me. It's interesting though. Isn't Apple going to add driver's licenses this year to the wallet?
There's only a few states that support
cool.
it.
Right, but I mean that goes right to your point. I mean I think that underlines exactly what you're saying.
As long as again, we're a few steps away from it being a thing that all states do and all people do. But it allows the watch to become the indispensable thing that you can't leave home without.
Right.
Sort of
more so than the iPhone.
It's like almost like a digital representation of everything you need to function, in a highly technological world, from identity to location to communications. And you had also talked about FaceTime, and a lot of the changes that have rolled out this year with FaceTime is something that might outlive technically the iPhone.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the FaceTime changes on the surface seem to be a response to the pandemic and Zoom and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that's where Apple's going with this, because for one, they're super late if they are.
Yeah.
For two, there's been a bunch of rumors that Apple is finally going to come out with a HomePod device or a speaker device that has a screen on it, like the Echo Show, like the Nest Hub that Google has. And again, they're late to that too. But when it does come out, or if and when it does come out, you know that it'll be something that everybody wants and everyone needs to have, and it'll transform things in an Apple way, lock people into that ecosystem, and also kind of eliminate. So right now, when we're home, when I call my grandparents or my son's grandparents, I use my phone. I use my iPad. You know, that's what we use for these calls. If the way this FaceTime is being set up, I think, with those sharing links, that the iPad feature, that center stage feature where it
I love
follows you,
that,
like
yeah.
it's all kind of pointing towards another device that we don't have yet, and we probably should by now, but it's not there yet. And you know, I think that FaceTime could be like the premier communication for Apple users, and really for everybody. If this mythical device comes out and it doesn't require an iPhone, like you can buy an Amazon Echo Show, you don't need anything else to set it up. You tap a few buttons on the screen and you're good to go. If Apple were to disconnect FaceTime from the iPhone, release this, you know, really pretty speaker that you put in your kitchen or your living room or whatever, and then use that as the communication device, that's an entrance into Apple. That's not the iPhone. And we don't really have, it's funny because it used to be the Mac. That used to be, if you were Apple and the Mac were, I mean, it was the only product they offered, but even when the iPod was around, you needed a Mac. Like that was the thing. Now it's the iPhone. Like that has to be someone's first device, is the iPhone. And what I was trying to get at in the article that I wrote was that that's what's changing. That's what's done.
Sure.
Like the iPhone isn't going to necessarily go anywhere. There'll be, you know, it's a decade, maybe more, where we're going to have it.
Yeah.
Right.
But it won't be the device you need to get. You'll be able to get an Apple Watch. You'll be able to get an Apple speaker. And the other thing was AR. These glasses that we keep hearing about as well. There was a really cool feature in Maps that was super fast. Like it went by in the keynote in like 10 seconds, maybe less. But it gives you like walking directions. So you scan the street you're on, and it scans all the buildings, and it overlays directions on the street. So the way it works now, you know, it works well. But there's a lot of times when I'll start walking in the city and I'm going the wrong way, and then it says make a U-turn or turn around, whatever. So it's like this, like puts it right in front of you. And, you know, you still have to hold your phone like this. And it's, you know, if that was on your glasses, that's life-changing.
Right.
I mean, that's awesome.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, you know, in the same way that when the iMac first came out in the 90s, the way it was positioned was it was so beautiful and so useful, you wanted it in the living room. So center of your computing experience. You make the point now that the iPhone is now, you've got to have the iPhone for everything else. And based on, you know, what you had written for Macworld, what you're saying, you know, the combination of the Apple Watch, the mythical glasses, assuming they arrive, and say AirPods, you know, you're in constant communication with the world around you, sight, sound, and, you know, and storage on your wrist of all your important documents and information. And I can easily see how, you know, that combination would replace or supplant the iPhone. I'm not going to replace it. You're right. It's not going away.
I mean, at some point, it'll be, you know, a device that isn't selling 30, whatever it is, a quarter. But by putting these things in place, the software and then the hardware, I mean, it makes it so, first of all, Apple's not going to fall apart when there's no more iPhone sales at that volume. And it also, it you know, it benefits us where we just, you know, we don't have to be dependent on these devices that, oh my God, where's my iPhone? It's in my pocket. The watch is on your wrist. The glasses are on your thing. The speaker is there. So it integrates all this stuff into our life just a little bit better.
We have a great question from our YouTube audience, Donnie over on YouTube. He said, wouldn't the screen size of the watch preclude it from ever replacing the iPhone?
Yes, for everything, for sure.
I'm with him on that one.
I agree. But when you think about the tasks that you do on your iPhone, how often do you need that giant screen? Not all of them. Not for answering a call, not for checking a text message, not for looking at notifications time. You know, there are a lot of things we do with our iPhone that doesn't need the screen. Just the thing I was talking about, keys, wallet, or any screen, really.
Sure.
I mean, it's there for when we need it. So, when we're watching a video or we're reading something, yeah, of course, we're going to need those devices.
Sending a text.
Well, you could do a text from a watch pretty easily.
Yeah, I hate doing it though.
You're not going to be watching.
People used to hate typing on glass too.
You're not going to be watching Netflix on your watch,
right? Of
but
course.
I don't watch Netflix on my phone as it is.
There you go.
So.
But there is a sort of, I get where Michael's coming from, and there is sort of a Dick Tracy aspect to this in terms of communication. And Apple's very good at constantly paring away the needless stuff to get to the core of what it is the person's trying to do, and then figuring out the best way to do that, in terms of UI and technology and software, and making it happen in a way that seems very seamless. And so I to Mike's point, what Apple seems to be doing is putting these pieces in place now. And we only get sort of glimmerings of where we may be in 5 or 10 years. But I think it's a very valid option for Apple.
And it's going to take time. And listen, I could be completely off base. We might be using our iPhones in 2055 the way we do now, but I don't think that's Apple's plan here.
Importantly, if it happens, we can circle back to this in 2055.
I was just going to say, I'll see you in 2025 at 2055, right?
Yeah, 2055.
And if you don't mind me at 94 years old, but okay, we'll give it a shot.
And we can say, you know what? Michael was right all along.
Please mark it down, people.
Yeah.
See you in 55.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. Do you have any last minute thoughts about either of this before we wrap up? I personally, I respect your opinion, Mike. I think I'm going to be using my iPhone for a lot longer. Maybe.
Yeah, and I do too. It's not, none of this is to say, listen, Steve Jobs said Macs were going away when 10, 12 years ago. I mean, he's right. He didn't say they were going away tomorrow.
Sure.
Apple has been laying the groundwork to get rid of the Mac for a decade and a half, and it's as ever present as it's ever been. But it's still working towards that inevitable future when it's not necessary. And that's the same thing with the iPhone. Again, I threw out that 2055 year. I mean, we're looking at decades here.
Yeah.
The iPhone is a monumental device. It's not going anywhere right now. Right. But Apple is always thinking, they're always working, they're always kind of laying these paths. And AR glasses might never work. The Apple Watch might never get there, but this is what they're working towards. Apple's for the last bunch of years, it's the weirdest thing because they sell zillions of these things, but they're trying to get us to use them less. And I think this is more along the lines of that. There's a lot of things in iOS 15 that will become more apparent over the next couple of years that are about us using other things and being more seamless with our technology and not picking up our iPhone 100 times a day to unlock it.
Fair enough. Great. Well, thanks guys so much for calling in, joining, chatting about this, and we'll chat next time. And thank you all. Yeah, thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you're watching on LinkedIn, you can head over to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk, and you can subscribe over there and hit the bell icon so you're notified every single time we post a new video. If you have any questions or comments that we didn't get to while we're live, or if you're watching this after the fact, please do still leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.